Hi everyone! Today we're going to talk about the coordinate plane. So most of us are familiar with this. We know this is graphing. So we're going to first learn our graphing basics. So the first thing we want to do when we look at our coordinate plane is note that it's made up of two lines. The first one is this horizontal line. This is called our x-axis. And what it does is it's a number line that has all of our negative numbers on the left side and our positive numbers on the right side. So it gives a direction from left to right. The next part of our coordinate plane that we notice is going to be the vertical number line that we see. And this is called our y-axis. And again, it measures our negatives down here at the bottom and our positives up here at the top. So we're able to determine if something's going to be positive or negative depending on where it's going to be located on this coordinate plane. The next thing we probably notice is that this coordinate plane has the x and y axis intersecting, and they intersect right here at this point. This is a special point called the origin. And the origin is first the intersecting point of the x and y axis. It's where our graphing begins when we start plotting points, and it has a special coordinate, we'll learn about those later, called 0, 0. So that's all about the origin. The next part of the coordinate plane we notice are going to be having ordered pairs graphed on it. So we're going to graph our first ordered pair. First, we probably need to see an ordered pair. So an ordered pair is going to be something like 3, 4. And what we notice is it's in a particular order. The ordered pair has to be in the order of x and y. This is going to tell us directionally how we're going to move on this coordinate plane. So the 3 tells us we're going to move either left or right first. Actually, the 3 doesn't. The x coordinate does. Then we have our y coordinate, the 4, and that's going to tell us if we're going to move down or up. So how will we know if we're supposed to move left or right and down and up? Well, that's going to be determined on what kind of numbers we have within this ordered pair. Positive numbers for our x-coordinate means we're going to move to the right in the positive part of the x-axis. Negative numbers in our x-coordinate means we're going to move to the left where the negative numbers lie on the x-axis. Positive numbers in our y-coordinate means we're going to move up the positive part of our y-axis, and negative numbers in our y-coordinate means we're going to move down the negative part of our y-axis. So on this one, since we have a positive 3, that means we're going to move up 3. And since we have a positive 4, that means we're going to move right 4. So starting at my origin, which is always where we start when we're plotting points, I have to move 3 places, 1, 2, 3 to the right. And from this point, I'm going to move 4 places up. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I'm going to just plot my point where those two intersect. The second way we can go ahead and plot points, some people find this a little bit easier, is to come over here to our 3, our positive 3 on our x-axis, and maybe draw like some kind of dotted line. And then come over here to our 4 on our y-axis. And where those two intersect, we see that point. That same point that we plotted going right 3 and then up 4 is going to be where those two lines intersect. So either of those are going to be fine when we're graphing or plotting points. So the next thing we notice is when we're looking at our coordinates, obviously I have a positive x, so I can have a negative x. Obviously I have a positive y, so I could probably have a negative y. So what does that mean as far as our coordinate plane? Well, what it means is when we look at these axes, it's broken up into 4 different parts. These are called quadrants. So this first one here on the right-hand side is going to be quadrant 1. Then we have next to it quadrant 2. In our left bottom corner is quadrant 3. And then finally, in our bottom right corner, we have quadrant 4. So what's really interesting about these quadrants is depending on where a point lies within this coordinate plane is going to be dependent on the quadrant, because these quadrants have special properties. For instance, when we look at our first point that we graphed, 3, 4, we notice that it's in quadrant 1. The special properties of this coordinate are that it was a positive 3, positive x coordinate, positive 4, positive y coordinate. So all points in quadrant 1 are going to have a positive x and a positive y. In quadrant 2, we're going to have a negative x but a positive y. We can see that the x's are negative, but the y's are still going up. In quadrant 3, we can see that the x's are negative and the y's are negative. Those points are going down. So they're going left and down. And in quadrant 4, we can see that we have a positive x and a negative y. So these are going to be the special properties of these points. Now that we know what makes up the coordinate plane and basics on how to plot ordered pairs, we're going to see that next. So the next thing we're going to do is plot points. So I have 5 points here that I'm going to plot. We just saw our quadrants, so we should hopefully know where they're going to lie. First thing, I have a positive x and a negative y. Going back to our quadrants here, when I have a positive x and a negative y, I expect this to lie in quadrant 4. So hopefully, once we plot it, we'll see that it's down there. The next point I have is negative 6, negative 2. We remember when both of our x and y coordinates are negative, they're going to lie somewhere here in quadrant 3. Our next coordinate is going to be negative 3, 1. Again, we have a negative x and a positive y. So when we are plotting that point, we expect, since it's a negative x and a positive y coordinate, to lie somewhere in quadrant 2. The last 2 points I'm going to save. Those are kind of a surprise. So let's plot these 3 points. So the first one, 5, negative 4. Again, because it's a positive x, this means I'm going to the right 5. Starting at my origin, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Because it's a negative 4, that means I'm going to go down 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And here's where that first point is going to be. Oops, sorry about that. If we look, our next coordinate, negative 6, negative 2, we know since it's a negative x coordinate, it's going to be going to the left. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And because it's a negative 2 in our y coordinate, we know it's going to go down on our y axis. So down 1, 2. And again, that does lie in the third quadrant like we said it was going to. If we look at our next coordinate, we have a negative 3, 1. Since it's a negative 3, we know we're going to move to the left 3 times on our x-axis. Since it's a positive y coordinate, we know we're going to move up 1 on our y-axis. So starting from our origin, I'm going to move left 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to move up 1. We do see that that is in our second quadrant. So now for our last 2 points. And these are special points because if we notice, unlike all of the other points that we have here, these have zeros in particular places. Well, what does that mean? If we look, because we have a 0 in our x coordinate, that means we're not going to move left or right. We're just going to stay there. Because we have a positive 3 in our y coordinate, we know that that means we're going to move up 3 places on our y-axis. So when we look, we're not going to move left or right, but we are going to move up 1, 2, 3 places. And that's where our first point's going to be. This is a special point. Anytime we have a point that lies somewhere on our y-axis, it's called a y-intercept. It doesn't mean a whole lot for us now, but it will later as we work through linear equations. If we look, our next point is 3, 0. That means we're going to move to the right 3 places. And since it has a 0 for our y-coordinate, we're going to stay and not move either up or down, or we move 0 places. So if we look, starting at the origin, we move 1, 2, 3 places. And if we notice, that puts us on our x-axis. So when our point lies on our y-axis, it's called the y-intercept. So if it lies on our x-axis, it's going to be called the x-intercept. And again, they don't mean a whole lot to us right now, but they will as we move through linear equations. The next thing that we're going to do is finding coordinates. So once I have coordinates plotted on my coordinate plane or points on my graph, what's their location? How do I name them? So it's easy for us once we got the name to plot the point. Now we're going to do the reverse. So we're going to start with coordinate A. First of all, hopefully we remember what quadrant it is in, that's right, quadrant 2. Okay, so let's look at A. Again, as we work through, we need to make sure our ordered pairs are always going to be in the form of X, Y. So left and right movement first, and then our vertical movement up and down. So if I start at my origin, I can see to get to A, I have to move 1, 2, 3 places. Then to the left. So I'm going to actually put that here. 3 left. Then what I have to do is move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 places up. So if we go back to our coordinate plane, remember, we were talking about our x-axis and how that measures left and right. Since I had to move to the left here, that's going to be a -3. Since I moved up 5 on my y-axis, that's going to be a +5. So the coordinate for A will be at -3, 5. If we look at B, this time, starting at the origin, we move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 places to the right. And then we move up 1 place on our y-axis. Because this time we had a +5, since this time we had a movement to the right, we know it's going to be a +5. And a movement of 1 up, it's going to be a +1. Therefore, our coordinate for point B is going to be 5, 1. Let's try point C next. If we start at our origin, this time we're moving 1, 2, 3, 4 to the left. And then we're moving 1, 2, 3 down. Since we move 4 left and 3 down, we remember in our x-axis, left was negative. Any points on the left is going to be a negative. Since we moved 3 down along our y-axis, again, remember, any points going down on our y-axis would be negative. Therefore, our coordinate for point C is -4, -3. If we go back and check, we know anything in our third quadrant has a -x and a -y, so we're doing good so far. The next point is going to be point D. Again, starting at our origin, I need to move left or right first. So 1, 2 places to the right. And 1, 2, 3, 4 places down. Since I moved to the right along my x-axis, I know that it's going to be a positive. Since I moved down on my y-axis, that's going to be a negative. Therefore, my coordinate is going to be 2, -4. Okay? Our next point is going to be point E. Again, starting at our origin, I move over 1 to the right, and I'm going to move up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 along our y-axis. Because I move to the right, we know that that's going to be a positive 1, x coordinate. And since I moved up 5, we know that's going to be a positive 5, y coordinate. Therefore, our coordinate is 1, 5. Again, going back to our quadrants, we know that any point that lies in quadrant 1 is going to be a positive x and a positive y, and we have that here. So our last 2 points are by far the trickiest points. If we notice, that point F is along our x-axis. What we just saw was anytime we have a point on our x-axis, that's going to be an x-intercept. But that doesn't tell its location. So first, we're going to find that coordinate. Again, if we start at the origin, I'm going to move to the left 1, 2 places. And since I don't move up or down along my y-axis, I just stay there. I move 0 places along my y. Therefore, since we went left on our x-axis, we know that's going to be a -2. And since I didn't move up or down, I stayed right on that axis, it's going to be a 0 for my y coordinate. So F is going to be located at -2, 0. Hopefully you don't get that confused with point G. If we look, point G doesn't move any way, left or right along our x-axis. It just stays kind of on that, at that origin piece. But it does move down 1, 2, 3 along the y-axis. So it moved 0 places on our x-axis, and it moved down 3 on our y-axis. Therefore, point G is going to be located at the coordinate 0, negative, because we went down, 3. And it's easy for us to see at this point that E and B fall in the first quadrant. A and F are going to be in the second quadrant. C is going to be in our third quadrant, and D is going to be in our fourth quadrant. But again, it brings us back to F and G. And this is by far the trickiest location whenever things lie on the axis. And it's exactly that. Anytime I have a point that's going to lie on our x-axis, it doesn't fall in either quadrant 2 or quadrant 3 or 1 or 4. It falls in the middle of those. And where its location is, wouldn't be a quadrant at all. It would be on our x-axis. We can see that it's along this line right here. So if quadrant F, the x-intercept, falls along the x-axis, then what do we think is going to happen with point G? If we look, point G falls along our y-axis. It's our y-intercept. And its location wouldn't be in either quadrant 3 or quadrant 4 or 2 or 1 if it was a positive. It actually is on our y-axis. So if we were talking about the location here, we would say it's on our y-axis.